The Seahawks, though, 23-15 winners over the New Orleans Saints. Ben, unfortunately, you did not have this spread at.
No, I didn't get it at 7.5 or 8.
Yeah,
I got it at 9 and lost. Yeah, with a backdoor cover. But you know, backdoor covers are like they're built into the line. Like you feel like you were robbed every time, but
sure.
It does happen. That's partly why those lines are there, which is what happened with the Broncos. The Saints the Seahawks dominated that game, I thought, but not as much as I thought they were going to dominate it. And the fact that Drew Brees threw for nearly 300 yards in the second half, over 250, was telling. And the fact that the Seahawks mustered zero offense except when the Saints were desperately trying to gang tackle Marshawn Lynch.
Well, one thing,
I mean,
the defense can get you so far, and I talked about the Niners defense, and we saw some good defense in the playoffs. You're not going to be able to pass for 103 yards again, as Russell Williams, as Russell Wilson did.
But how many passes did he complete in the second half? 1, 2?
Tops, yeah. I mean,
he went 9 of 18 total in the game.
He completed two passes.
I think is the second half. So you're not going to be able to do that against San Francisco. It was a different kind of game, and
it was windy.
But Wilson's got to. They have to figure something out to throw the ball a little more effectively against San Francisco.
I agree.
So I'm going to be needlessly humble here, which will be the first time in recorded history.
Interesting.
I won the bet because I went with the Saints, right? And I said before the games, watch out for the Saints. They might beat the Seahawks, but if they don't, they'll cover, etc. So I happen to be right that they covered. But I wasn't right that they could beat the Seahawks. They couldn't beat the Seahawks. They got lucky to get to 23-15. They got lucky that I covered. I mean, the bouncing off the hands so that Meacham can catch that ball. I mean, there was a lot of luck to get to 23-15. The Seahawks, as bad as their offense was in the second half, as bad as their passing game is, and that's a huge Achilles heel for them against San Francisco, I still think that they dominated the hell out of the Saints, and the Saints never had a chance at winning that game.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. So, no, Seahawks crushed the Saints.
I never had a moment where I thought that the Saints were going to win that game.
Why is that?
Because they weren't in it ever. I mean, it was 16-0 at halftime, and then it stayed that way forever, and then an incredibly lucky play led to a 60-yard gain that set up the one touchdown. And then as soon as the Seahawks got it back, they went and scored, and it was 23-8. And then the Saints had their only good drive of the game, but that's a drive we've seen a billion times in the NFL where you finally get up by 15 points, and then all of a sudden you look like world beaters.
That's only the third time, by the way, that Sean Payton has been held scoreless in the first half. So when you're talking about the Seahawks and the Saints, we also talked about previously, I don't remember which one of you it was exactly, but Michael Bennett was talking smack about Jimmy Graham after the game. Obviously, prior to the game, NFL cameras basically showed Jimmy Graham going after Seahawks players. Coaching staffs had to separate both camps. But then Michael Bennett had some fighting words after the game. He said Jimmy Graham is overrated. He said he's soft. He only had one catch in the game. Do any of you agree at all with what Michael Bennett said?
I mean, I can't stand Jimmy Graham. I think he's my least favorite player in the NFL. Really? But he's a good player. He's a great player. He's got double
Why is he your least favorite player?
Because of his attitude, because the stuff that he was talking about before, because how he was with the Niners in the week leading up to the championship game a couple of years ago when Vernon caught the ball to send the Niners to the NFC Championships. I've never liked him. I think he's a cocky guy. He makes me like Jeremy Shockey.
That's hard to do.
Yeah, which is hard to do.
I see what you're saying. I hadn't thought of it that way before, Michael, but like Jimmy Graham is so physically gifted that like when he brags about being 6'8", 428 pounds or whatever he is, right? I know, I'm exaggerating, right? But like you're like, yeah, okay, that's what you are.
No, he's good.
So, like,
he's good.
Right, good for you.
But you don't have to be like,
right.
I mean.
And if I was, and he's stupid, because here's who you're not going to get.
Wow.
Here's who you shouldn't get in the face of. The Seahawk defenders.
Yeah.
Okay. Like, hey, you got to know who you're playing, right? Okay. You're playing whoever, the Packers. Just name a team. That's fine. Don't get in the Seahawks defenders' face, you idiot. And by the way, the
Seahawks
don't
see a difference between one team to the other. I think that Jimmy Graham is
wrong.
the Packers. Well, but I mean, what I'm saying is he does this thing without. It's just a mind game he's playing. He's going to play that mind game.
May I very quickly? The one instance that I'll always remember about Jimmy Graham is that he laid down a hit on Charles Tillman. This was about a year and a half ago. And Tillman was concussed, and he stood over him for about 2 seconds. And that was just sort of like, that really wasn't
kind of a little
needed.
bit of a bad guy. But look, don't get me wrong. No,
and we're not bashing Jimmy Graham like crazy. I respect the hell out of him as a player.
And we are.
No,
we are bashing
I'm not saying I hate the guy. I'm just backing up what Michael's saying.
Look, he's not soft. So Michael Bennett's wrong. He's not soft.
I like
be an
Billy Graham
asshole.
more. I think I like Billy Graham more.
But you know what's interesting, and it relates back to what we said about the Panthers. So here's a guy, Jimmy Graham, who is not yet, and maybe will be, and as a lot of young players are, we saw it with the Panthers, was hyped in the wrong way, and it may well have cost him. Like, here's what professionals don't do: have to be restrained by their coaches before a big NFL game. Like, they're focused, and here he is jawing, goes after these guys, got to be restrained by the coaches. Just nonsense, overhyped, getting in guys' face, posturing for no reason, dumb, silly talk. And then what happens? He catches one pass on the final drive of the game. I mean, you couldn't.
There was a pregame bounty on those guys, though.
You couldn't look worse than having that before the game. And then, so Michael Bennett, guess what? Michael Bennett, at this point, today, that game,
until next season,
gets to say whatever he wants about Jimmy Graham.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And just last thing on this, Seahawks are a well-coached team, right? So I almost took the Jimmy Graham under, even though he's a great player and he catches all those balls and stuff. Because here's what the Seahawks weren't going to let the Saints do.
Let Jimmy Graham beat him.
Well, there was no single coverage on him the whole day.
Also, I believe Jimmy Graham got hurt about halfway through the year, and then he came back. I'm going to guess that he was not near full strength, because his numbers there in the first 7 or 8 games so dramatically exceeded what he had in the back half of the season.
Who would you rather have, Vernon Davis or Jimmy Graham?
Oh, Jimmy Graham.
Totally.
No.
You mean
brainer.
like for a season?
Yeah.
Yeah, Jimmy Graham.
What I was reading in the New Orleans Times-Picayune, fantastic name, the losses to the Jets and the Saints, or excuse me, the losses to the Jets and the Rams, many people were saying, they could have played at home. There's no way the Seahawks win that game at the Metrodome in New Orleans. So maybe that's just the one thing that basically fans, writers are looking back on and basically saying, if you don't lose to the Jets and the Rams, they play at home, they potentially beat the Seahawks.
Ifs and what? They were in the playoffs. They made it to the.
By the way, these guys went.
Conference
By the way,
finals.
they went 11-5. They would have needed to go 13-3. That would have tied them with the Seahawks, who beat them, and that game would have been in Seattle anyway.
Yeah, very quickly, last play of the game. Can we just talk about what happened with the Marques Colston? Why don't you go out of bounds? Why don't you run one more play?
My guess is that they had a play that they said, this is our last play.
We read that was not the case.
That was not the case.
Sure, yeah, that's what everybody thought there. I thought it was, a dumb play if designed that way, at least based on.
It's a dumb play if designed, but at least there's an excuse.
Right, at least there's an excuse. Once, though, you make the catch with Colston, like you'd like him to be like, nah, I'm not running that play. We have it at the 33. I'm going to step out of bounds.
With 7 seconds.
And we'll throw another ball in the end zone, because it no longer is a Hail Mary from the 33.
Right.
It's a more attainable catch. But either way, the result was special.
Oh, my God, it was so disappointing.
If Sean Payton had drawn it up, then I would say Sean Payton is a good enough coach that he knows better than I do, right?
Yeah, I agree.
And I would give him deference and say, hey, maybe he's drawn it up so that Lance Moore only has one guy to beat, and that's better odds than throwing a Hail Mary. But if Colston made the decision on his own and then threw it forward for 20 yards,
Jesus, I mean, that's
a terrible play.
Well, Darren Sproles was kind of there, though. So
and then if you know that you have a receiver who's going to do that, even if he's your best receiver, throw to another receiver, because you have other receivers who are going to make a better decision.
Or just try to throw it backwards, not forwards.
Yeah, well, there's that.
Yeah,
too.
or was a play and he
or Lance Moore was offsides on the pass. It was like a hockey move.
Was he really?
He went across ball. I mean, he was forward. He should have laid back if it was a.
I'll forever love Lance Moore for doing the Hingle McCringleberry. I know we talked about that before. You guys have no idea what I'm talking about.
Sean Payton said bluntly, "We'll look at the film." Next question. But it seemed like the answer indicated freaking Marques Colston. Yeah.